Okay.
We'll start at sharp 4.
YouTube is live now.
That'd be great. Yeah.
People are asking for ebook.
Okay, let's start then. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Devi Dasan, and I'm from Carving Challenge. From all of us here from Carving Challenge, it's my duty, but of course, privilege and honor for me to welcome you all for today's webinar, which is entitled Challenges of Post-COVID Era, Discover the Power to Change Your Life for Good. So the whole theme is going to revolve around how we discover our life for good, especially at a time the COVID-19 has forced the world to change. Businesses are getting redefined. Revenue models are getting challenged. Leadership is witnessing transformation. It's not only the organization, but individuals are also being affected by this pandemic called COVID-19. So at these circumstances, if we are able to harness the power to change, that would ensure success. So ladies and gentlemen, today's webinar will be delivered by one of the finest change agents the world has seen, Mr. Stanley Beckett. He is the Chief Executive Officer of his company called Change Creator SA and lives in South Africa along with his beautiful wife, Elani Beckett, and 2 children, helping individuals and organizations to embrace change, to get unstuck and move ahead in their life and business. Stanley Beckett, by education, is an astrophysicist, but his love is in the area of change. He always say, Mr. Devi, why organizations and individuals are struggling with the change? So this inquisitiveness has got him into the researching into the area of change. And for the last about 20 odd years, he has been doing research on change and has come out with various tools, including what he calls Change Creator Formula, which he will be articulating before you as he begins his program. So ladies and gentlemen, when I look at you, I can see a lot of you over there. You know, a lot of companies like Steel Authority of India being represented by some of the senior most professionals. And I can see BHEL have sent a large contingent of people to attend this program. And I can see professors, educators, lecturers, housewives, professionals, you know, the companies like Sriram Pistons, they all have assembled over here. So the program is going to be 1 hour long. And for the first 40 minutes, Mr. Stanley, who is also incidentally a life coach, would articulate his lecture, which is PPT driven. And after that, there is going to be a 20-minute question answer session. So you can actually throw your questions onto the chat box. And we have already designated an officer of Carving Talent who will pick it up and please pass it on to Mr. Stanley. So ladies and gentlemen, before I hand over the mantle to Mr. Stanley, let me tell you what we do in Carving Talent. Carving Talent is a learning organization, and we are into 3 areas, 3 verticals primarily. And these 3 verticals are education, because several of us, collectively, the all team put together, we have got more than 200 years of experience, drawn from divergent areas of life who are passionately in love with refining human capital. So since several of us are from educational background, we support to the hilt the cause of education, helping children and the senior students to become successful in life. So education is one thing, curriculum development, faculty development, etc., etc. And the second area is training. We are big time in training. Some of the biggest organizations take our services, like Steel Authority of India, United Nations for their women empowerment programs. We do training of civil servants, so on and so forth, technical servant training, as well as strategic and behavioral. There are a lot many. And the third area is we are also into consulting. So Carving Talent is not just a company which is there to make money. In fact, we believe in giving first. And we have actually a philosophy based on which we function. And this philosophy is called FTGM. And these four letters, FTGM, are actually the four pillars, load-bearing pillars of Carving Talent. The F stands for faith. So wherever we go, we tell people to have faith in them, faith in self and others, faith in the organization where they are working, faith in brothers, sisters. So faith is something which we inform people, we tell people that propels human being. Faith brings hope. And when hope is there is everything. So we communicate to people that have faith in yourself and others. The second pillar is T stands for tolerance, especially at a time where the world is showing so much of intolerance. We try to propagate that age-old school of thinking, have tolerance, based on which the entire edifice of Indian philosophy called Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam has been brought in, developed. So have tolerance. And the third pillar is, we call it generosity. We tell people to be generous, not only in giving, in kinds and deeds, but in words also. How can we be generous, showing compassion, kindness, and mindfulness. So the last pillar, M, stands for mindfulness. So this is something, mindfulness is living in the present. Mostly we are stuck in the past and worrying about the future, forgetting the very fact that we are forgetting to live in the present, forgetting the fact that it is living in the present that is going to build the great future we want to build. So these are the four pillars on which the entire edifice of Carving Talent resides in a nutshell. We have coined our corporate punchline, and that corporate punchline is a unit of value-based professionalism. So we believe that what makes a human being, or an organization for that matter, successful in life, particularly individual, on one side, he or she has to be a good human being with human capacities and qualities, humanness, and on the other side, he should be a good professional. So when value and professional match, you have an organization which is sparkling like 1,000 rising sun, or a man who is respected, accepted, admired, and followed. So this is about Carving Talent. So this program is not about Carving Talent, but it is about change. So let us begin our program, which is entitled as the Challenges of Post-COVID Era. Discover the power to change your life for good. So may I request Mr. Stanley Beckett to now please take over and enlighten us and the audience. Sir, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So Devi, can you hear me? So Devi, can you guys hear me on that side?
Yeah, we can hear you, sir. Carry on.
Okay, so you can hear me. So yeah, welcome everybody, and welcome to this very important talk that we're going to have. I am going to share my screen so that everybody can follow me on here. Can I just find out from somebody on that side if you can see the screen?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So I'm just going to move this so that we can start from the beginning, and then we will move on from there. So what we're going to do is just a bit of an agenda quickly for today. Number one, we're going to just quickly do the welcome from my side so that you just know who I am. Then number two, I'm going to talk about the 3 biggest mistakes everyone is making right now, especially in business. 3 mistakes that we need to be aware of to avoid, because what we are going to find out is that it's the simple things that we're forgetting to do right that's causing the most damage to ourselves and our business right now. So what are we going to do, and how are we going to make sure we are not making those mistakes? Then we're going to talk about one of the really big problems right now in the world is the knowing doing gap and how that affects us and our business. Then we're going to talk about the secret formula for change, understanding a little bit about how change takes place. And change is happening. I'm sure we can all agree, whether we like it or not, we're all being forced to change how we think and how we do business. And the world is changing. Are we going to change? Mute yourself. Difficult. Let me just quickly do a bit. There we go. All right. So before we go back to the welcome, number 5, we're going to talk about the one magic word, which is going to save you right now in your business. So that's something you really need to pay attention to. And then number 6, we're going to talk about the 3 things that you can do from today as a business to really solidify your foundation and to help you get through this pandemic we're all facing. And then we'll go into questions. And just to let you know, we all are going through the same thing worldwide right now. Here in South Africa, in the USA, in Britain, in New Zealand, Australia, in whatever country you mentioned, everybody's going through the same things right now. And we're all asking the same questions. How we survive this change that the world is going through. Why I'm sitting here today talking to you all the way from South Africa is because mainly my love for India. Me and my family were fortunate enough to, I'll try and put this somewhere. Me and my family were fortunate enough to be able to travel to India and to live there for more than 6 months last year, with the idea being to see if we would want to also work within the Indian market. And I really fell in love with the Indian market. We were privileged enough to go to a lot of industries and a lot of learning institutions. And it was through this time period that I was fortunate enough to meet the members of Carving Talent, especially Mr. Devi, who took me around and really has spent a lot of energy and time in getting us to understand India and understand what India is all about and the market is about. And that is why I decided for today's talk to just focus on the Indian market and on the people there in India, and just talk and give hopefully a word of hope, a message of hope, and something for us to focus on going forward. For us as a company back here in South Africa, my work in this area started working with a company called Productivity South Africa. This is a government-led institution which gets us to go out to companies who are struggling and to create a turnaround solution for them. So I have been working in this field for many years, for more than 10 years, working with businesses and individuals, understanding how to adapt to change and also how to turn around a business which is struggling. Some of our most recent clients that I'm working with at the moment is a very big client in South Africa called Exxaro. They are all about mining and steel production and very heavy also, as I said, in the mining industry. So we are working closely with them to help them adapt to the changes and to become a change leadership organization in this difficult time. Working also with a company called Gautrain Management System. We have a very big railroad system here in South Africa called the Gautrain. So we're working with that management system because they have a very big step backwards, financially struggling, and we are helping them there also to understand how to deal with the change. We're working with Old Mutual, which is one of the biggest financial institutions within South Africa, to turn them into a change leadership organization. MultiChoice, which is also called DSTV, which is our biggest satellite network television company in South Africa. We're working with them. We work with companies such as, for example, the Soweto Workshop for the Blind, which is really interesting because there you have people who have no education, blind and deaf, yet even they understand the need for change, and we level. where we can absolutely work with them in terms of helping them to learn how to deal with the changes we're going through. And finally, as I said, we also work with entrepreneurs. So we're not only focusing today on people who are in business, although that is a big point of focus because businesses are really struggling right now and struggling to understand how to change their thinking and how to change the way they do business. But we're also working with entrepreneurs and individuals to help them understand this. Right, so that's a little bit about us. Let's quickly go jump into what are the 3 biggest mistakes that companies are making right now. And I'm going to go to the very absolute bottom level. And the first one is, and I don't know if you can see that on the screen yet, but the first one is companies are forgetting who they are. In this time of turbulence, in this time of change, companies are in what I call the panic mode. And as we will learn about the mind and the brain, how it works, when we start to panic, when we start to fear, what happens is that our thinking mind switches off. And then we go into this panic mode and we start doing all the things that are the opposite of what we should be doing. So instead of surviving and doing the things that are going to help us thrive and survive, we go and do all the things because we forget who we are. So the first thing I'm going to ask companies out there, and I'm going to invite you, there are some companies here that have some teams that are joining us, and maybe we can do this as a team working exercise in the company. Go back and ask your employees who you are in the first place. What was your vision when you started the business? Go back to your basics. That is really going to be the most important thing you can do as a company right now, is go back to basics and start focusing on that. In this time of challenge, it's the worst thing we can do is try and reinvent ourselves. The worst thing we can do is try and do things that we're not, how can I say, 100% ready to do yet. The time will come for that. And we need to start having those discussions about what we can do that is going to be different in the future. But now is not the time. Now is the time for us not to forget who we are, but rather to go back to who we are. The second thing, the mistake that big businesses make right now, is they're focusing on the wrong side of the equation. So when you ask the question, what equation am I talking about? I'm talking about there's 2 sides to this equation right now, is that right now, everybody is either coming from one of 2 places. You're either coming from circumstances. So I'll say that again. You're either coming from circumstances or you are coming from a vision. And I'm sure you can guess which one of those 2 is going to stay stuck and which one of those 2 is going to move forward right now as a company. Because the truth is, even here in South Africa, we are seeing many big companies that have been around for many years that are closing its doors. Why? Because they're focusing on the wrong side of the equation. They're focusing on the circumstances. They're putting all their attention on how to fight the circumstances that are happening around them. And they're putting no attention on how to work into a vision for the future. And as we will learn about people, is that people are inspired by vision, not by the fear of circumstances. We are going to need as companies to pull together like never before, to work together, to collaborate, to get our employees working on a level like never before. But they will only do that if it's coming from the right vision, not from the circumstances and the fear of the circumstances of what is happening. And then the third mistake that companies are making is they're not being present. They're too worried about the future. They're too concerned about the mistakes they might have made in the past that has led them to where they are now, that they're not being present right now. In the time when we need to be present like never before, it seems to me like a lot of companies are doing the opposite. They're worrying about the future. They're scrambling. But if we realize that in the present, today, every day we wake up, we can, if we only focus on doing the basics right for these next few months, I guarantee you, not only are you as a company going to make it and as individuals going to make it through this time that we're going through, but you're going to be the stronger and the better for it in the future. So again, the 3 mistakes: do not forget who you are, what you are about. Go back to the basics and if you started the company because you wanted to serve your customers to the best of your ability, go back to that again. If you started the company because you wanted to be number 1 in the way that you create products, then go back to that again. Go back to the original vision. Secondly, don't focus on the circumstances of today. Yes, be mindful of the circumstances and be mindful of what's happening. But don't spend all your time focusing on it. Rather focus on the vision for the future. In other words, what is it that we can start doing from right now to create an inspiring vision for ourselves and our employees? And number three, that means we need to be present. Then we move on to the next thing I want to jump into, and that's change. And when it comes to change, this is one of the best statements I've ever read about change. It was written more than 1,000 years ago. It was found on the crypt of an unknown monk who had passed away in Rome. It was written in Latin, but it said the following. It said, "When I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. I found it was difficult to change the world, so what did I try and do? I tried to change my nation. When I found that I could not change the nation, I began to focus on changing my town. I couldn't change the town, and as an older man, I tried to change my family." And then he goes on to say, "Now as an old man, I realized the only thing I can change is myself. And suddenly I realized that if long ago I had changed myself, I could have also made an impact on my family. My family and I could have made an impact on our town. Their impact could have changed the nation, and I could indeed have changed the world." So what the statement says is something very important for us to realize when it comes to change management, to change leadership, to dealing with change, because an organization is just made up of a bunch of individuals. What is an organization? I don't care if you're in an organization that has 150,000 employees or if you're an organization that only has one employee. It still comes down to the same thing. An organization is made up of a bunch of individuals. If you want an organization to change, then you need to learn how to change the individuals within the organization. It's no point putting systems in place and saying to everybody, here's a new system for you to change, start doing it this way, if you haven't changed the people. You first need to change the people, and that starts with you, because the truth is the only person in life that you can change is yourself. And how often do leaders of organizations not realize this properly, that you are the only person that you can change? If you start to change, others around you will start to change, and then you will start to change momentum. So very important first thing to know about change is that change starts with each person individually. The question is, how do we change each person individually? And why is it necessary? Albert Einstein once said that the greatest insanity of mankind is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. I'm going to, thanks to COVID-19 pandemic, expand on that today and say the greatest insanity of mankind, the greatest insanity of companies will be to think they can go into this changing world and keep doing things the way they used to do them in the past and still expect the same results. That is not going to happen. We are going to have to change the way we do business, and we're going to have to realize, as people and companies around the world are realizing, is that it's become more customer focused than ever before, more about value than ever before, and more about the value that we give to others than ever before. And this is really something that we need to realize. We cannot go into this new world and keep doing things the same way we did them in the past. So please don't confuse me when I said to you earlier on that we must go back to basics and we must stick to that. That's for right now. Remember, you need a different strategy at a different time. Right now, your strategy as a business should be to go back to the basics, the things that made you as a business what it is today. But you also need to start focusing on the vision for how you are going to change to be able to compete in a changing world. Right, so then we can move on to the next slide. And the question for me became, why don't we change? Why do people struggle so much with change? And I've asked this question in multiple sessions in my lifetime with many thousands, hundreds of thousands of people over the years. And there's always different answers, but one common answer is that people are stuck right now and they don't know how to change. And that's becoming very fast, becoming the number one answer to this question. As businesses, why aren't you changing right now? A lot of businesses will feed back to me right now that they don't know what to do. We're stuck. We're in this world that's changing faster than we know how to change, because we didn't ever have to change as fast in our way of thinking, our way of doing business than what we do right now. And many people will share that they don't know what to do. And I'm going to challenge that today. And I'm going to say, what if you as a business already know what to do? What if you already have the answer? And the truth is, I don't care what business you are in. If you do not have the answer of what you need to do to change right now, nobody else will. Nobody else knows your business the way you know your business. Nobody else can run your business the way you can run your business. In other words, the answer to change is already in you, but we just need to go and find that answer. And secondly, many times we know what the answer is right now, but we don't do what we know we should be doing. Look at one of the biggest problems in the world is to do with our health. They say scientifically, we have never been as unhealthy as a generation as what we are right now. And my question always is, why are we so unhealthy? Is it because we do not know what to do? Is it because we do not know what type of foods we should be eating, or that we should be exercising, or all of these things, drinking proper water, getting proper rest? The fact of the matter is, we do know these things, but we're not doing what we know we should be doing. You see, there's an old saying that comes from the past that many of us still believe in, that we don't realize has changed as well. Remember that old saying that said knowledge is power? Well, I'm going to suggest today, knowledge is no longer power. Everybody has knowledge on your phone, on this little device called a phone, right here. You have all the knowledge you will ever need in the world. But is that making you a more effective company? Is that knowledge making you a more effective person? I can go into any business in the world, doesn't matter where that business is, where people are sitting and working. And I can say to every person working, write down 5 things that you know, if you started doing those 5 things today, or 5 things if you know you stopped doing those 5 things today, would help you improve your performance at work, your performance in your life, in health, in financials, in anything. And I guarantee you, every person will be able to write down 5 things. You see, we all know how to be doing better than what we're doing, but we're not doing it. And that is what we refer to through Carving Talent and Change Creator. That is what we refer to as the knowing-doing gap. And the knowing-doing gap is that gap between what we know and what we do. So right now, a lot of people are out there looking for more knowledge, looking to know more, asking the question, how do we get out of the situation? What do? We need knowledge. But just because they're going to get that knowledge doesn't mean they're going to apply that knowledge. You see, the power is not in knowing, the power is in doing. So the question is, how do we close this gap for us as businesses and for us as individuals between what we know we should be doing and what we actually do? So that brings me again back to the question on how does change take place? And the most basic for formula, as Sir Devi said, I am a scientist and a lover of formulas. So the most basic formula for change is the following, and then that is that change will take place. And this is in your company. This is you as an individual. This can be in a company with millions of people. The same thing happens, is that change will take place when the motivation to change is bigger than your resistance to change. That is so important. I'm going to say it again. Change will take place when your motivation to change is greater than your resistance to change. So the question is, what are we talking about when we're talking about motivation to change? And what are we talking about when we're talking about your resistance to change? And on a business level, it's exactly the same. Change will take place on a business, no matter how big or small that business is, when the motivation for that business to change is greater than your resistance to that change. And I'm sure all of you can agree right now that the resistance to change and the resistance to what's happening in the world is very big. So that means our motivation to change has to be even bigger than what it's ever been before. And that then brought me to the question, so what are the variables that make up your motivation to change? And what are the variables that make up your resistance to change? And what I've come up with and what we work with when we talk about the Change Creator formula is that on the left-hand side of this equation in front of you, before the larger than sign, you will see is your variables that make up your motivation to change. And on the right-hand side is the variables that make up your resistance to change. Now, I'm sure the mechanical engineers and mathematicians among us will love this formula, and I'm sure that those of us who are not mathematical will be afraid of this formula. What I'm going to tell you is do not concern yourself with this at the moment. As we will be working with you, hopefully with many of you going ahead, and Carving Talent will be a part of helping you to understand this formula as it expands, and the more you understand this, the more you will understand how to adopt and to change positively. For today's session, we are only going to focus on the one variable just very briefly, and that is the P in the motivational side of creating change, the P. And the P stands for power, because if you do not have power as an individual, if you do not have power as an organization, you are going to struggle to create any real changes. For more than ever before, we need powerful leaders, and we need powerful organizations to help lead us through this time period we're going through. So the question then becomes, firstly, what is power? And then the second question being, how do you increase your power? And perhaps Sir Devi and the team that's helping us, perhaps people can quickly type in their answers, or if somebody has an insight into this that they would like to share with us quickly, this question on what they believe is power. So when we talk about power, what is power? And secondly, how do you increase your level of power? So I don't know if there's a way for us to see if there's any questions at this stage. I will continue until I hear something more from you. But if anybody would like to see if they want to guess, because this is probably the most important question we can ask ourselves right now. What is power? Because we're going to need power to get through this time period. And how do you increase your power? So I will wait to hear if I have any questions. So let's first go into the question, what is power? By understanding, where does power come from? And maybe that's another question I can ask the delegates to think about. Where does power come from? We speak often about having power, but where does that power actually come from? Because if we are not going to understand where power comes from, how will we ever understand how to increase the power? Now, understanding where the power comes from, we first need to understand our mind. We've all heard about the mind, right? So in a very, very simplest terms, we've got three parts to our mind. We've got the conscious mind, we've got the subconscious, unconscious mind, and we've got the body. Now, the body is just an instrument of the mind. So whenever we think, whatever the mind thinks and instructs, it's like the brain isn't even your mind. I often ask people, tell me, what does your mind look like? And people think about the brain. Your brain isn't your mind. Your brain is also just an instrument of the mind. So in other words, we think with the mind. This thinking gives an instruction to the brain, which then does everything it needs to chemically to make sure that our body reacts to what the mind is telling the brain to tell the body to do. Now, there was an interesting study done many years ago to show the difference in power between the conscious and the unconscious, subconscious mind. And remember, in an organization is just the macro of the micro individual. In an organization, there's a conscious thinking mind that everybody's aware of, but in an organization, there's also an unconscious underlying cultural mind. And what organizations must understand is if you're going to change something, it's at that deep unconscious level that the changes have to take place. The conscious level is easy, and that's the one that everybody always agrees with every change, and it makes sense. But then when you actually look at it, nothing is changing and nothing is happening for the organization, because they don't realize that the organization also has a subconscious, unconscious mind that needs to be dealt with. But in this study, which is from a book called The Answer by a man by the name of John Ashraf, they tried to explain the difference in power between the conscious and the subconscious mind so that we could understand what the differences are in terms that we can understand, in terms of like miles per hour, kilometers per hour, bits per second, like computers. And the first thing they did, when they speak about what they call the speed of thought, in other words, how fast does the conscious mind think compared to the subconscious mind? And what they found is that if the conscious mind thinks at 120 to 140 miles per hour, the subconscious part of your mind thinks at over 100,000 miles per hour. Now, that means that the subconscious mind thinks 1,000 times faster than what the conscious mind thinks. Why is that important? Because whenever we need to make a decision, we are not making the decision from the conscious thinking mind like we would like to think we do. We are actually making that decision at a subconscious level. And then that's happening 1,000 times faster than our conscious mind thinks. By the time we make that decision consciously, we are not making the decision consciously, we're making it unconsciously. In other words, we are making the decisions by what has been programmed at a subconscious level. And that is why we'll keep making the same decisions, even though we tell ourselves, next time I'm going to make a different decision. If you do not change that at that level of the subconscious, then your decision making is always going to be the same. And the subconscious level is what we refer to on a business as the culture of the business. If you do not learn how to change that deep-rooted culture within a business, then all the decisions you make going forward are actually almost doomed not to succeed, because it's not from that conscious, rational thinking mind that your decisions are being made. Then we go into the next area, which is what we call the amount of information. So how much information can we take in this part of the mind at any one time? On a conscious level, they say we can take in, if you think of computer terms, 2,000 bits of information per second. At a subconscious level, they say we take in over 400 billion bits of information per second. In other words, there's so much information coming at us at any one time that we cannot possibly focus on it all. So what happens is we tend to tell ourselves what to focus on. Now, we would think that that's a rational decision, that we would tell ourselves focus on only the good things, but it's not. We tend to tell ourselves to focus on what is already programmed at a subconscious level. So at a subconscious level, if we believe that life is difficult and that there are no opportunities for growth out there as a business, we will not see the opportunities that are there, because our conscious mind is telling our subconscious mind, which sees everything. Our subconscious mind sees the opportunities, sees the missed opportunities, sees the good things, sees the bad things. But our conscious mind tells our subconscious mind only to focus on why we cannot grow, why we cannot move forward, why we need to keep struggling. And it's so funny that we are like this as human beings, but this is exactly how we are. We don't realize that we're doing this to ourselves until someone starts pointing it out to us. So because we don't have too much more time today to go into this, I'm going to leave it there, but I'm going to ask yourself, please, as a business, as an individual, just ask yourself, which side of the equation are you focusing on? Are you focusing on the circumstances of what's happening right now, or are you focusing on the vision for the future? In other words, where you want to go as a business and how you're going to grow? Because I guarantee you, the one you focus on is the one that's going to grow. If you're going to keep focusing on the circumstances, you're going to keep seeing the negative circumstances. You're going to be like some people here that we are on lockdown, just like in India. All they do all day long is sit watching the bad news on the television. No wonder that is their experience of life right now. Start focusing on what you want, not what the circumstances are. Then the next thing that we look at is in terms of behavior, is that on a daily basis, 2 to 4% of our behavior is conscious, and 96 to 98% is unconscious. 2 to 4% of another way of putting this in a business, 2 to 4% of the behavior in your business every day is rational, comes from a rational thinking point of view. 96 to 98% comes from the cultural point of view. In other words, this is the way we've always done it. So we'll just continue doing it this way, because nobody has ever changed us at that level before. And that might be something that worked for your business years ago.
Stanley sir.
Yes.
Yes, Soumitra, you said there is a question from Visheshwar Bhattacharya ji.
Yes.
I think it's important to, what he has asked is it possible to be rational in the midst of so much of uncertainty?
Yes, very good question, sir. Thank you very much. Absolutely. Is it possible? Now, please remember, when we ask that question, I'm going to go back to a mathematical formula, right? We must understand there's a difference between possibility and probability. Okay. So the question, is it possible to be rational during such circumstances as we're living right now? Absolutely, it's possible. There are many companies and many individuals that are very rational right now. that are very focused right now. Just as with the Great Depression in the 1930s around the world, there were many companies that grew out of that Great Depression and are great companies today because they were rational during that time period. But I think the question then is it probable? No, it's probably not going to happen if you're making the mistakes that I mentioned in the beginning of this seminar. If you are making the mistakes of not focusing on the basics, if you're making the mistake of focusing on the circumstances instead of the vision and not being present, then your probability of being rational through this time period decreases significantly. So that is what we're all about today, is to give you the 3 small things that you as a business can do right away, right from today. And I would say as a business owner that you take this lesson tomorrow and you give it to all of your employees. And you tell them, guys, if we do nothing else for this next month, we are going to focus on these 3 things. Because the more we focus on these things, the greater our probability will be that we start thinking rationally and help. And it's only through thinking rationally that we're going to get through this difficult time as a business. So I hope that answers the question. I will open up to more questions as we go along. Okay. I'm going to, by the way, everybody on this, I believe that Sir Devi has got everybody's information. We will be forwarding you the presentation so that you can go through it yourself again. I'm sure we will have this recorded that you will also be able to receive, and you will get a free copy of the book Liftoff for you and your staff to start working through on how do we set this vision. For right now, let's just quickly go back to the conscious and the subconscious mind. We can go through the slide at a later time. All I want you to know right now is that your conscious mind is your thinking mind. In your business, your conscious rational mind is also your thinking mind. It's where all your ideas are going to come through. And Napoleon Hill says in his book, Think and Grow Rich, he says, all you need in life is one good idea to change the direction of your company. And I guarantee you.
All right, Stanley sir, I will interrupt you again.
Okay.
Because there is a question from Dr. Durga Madhav. He has asked, how do you think a change may not derail in normal situations?
Sorry, I didn't understand
Yeah,
the
the question is, how do you think a change may not be derailed in normal situations?
Okay, I'm not sure if I get the
question is, only changes required for this kind of extraordinary circumstances? Or changes necessary for a normal circumstances? If COVID-19 would not have happened, still change is relevant or not? That's what he's asking.
So thank you, Doctor. I think that's a very good question. I think to answer that question, the best way that I can say is I'm just hold on a second quickly. Let me just, there we go. All right. So I think the best way to answer that question, Doctor, is the following. Change is a constant. The only constant in life is change. We are aware of the world as it was before, and we're aware of the world now, that it is changing quite significantly. But all that the pandemic has done is it has accelerated, or it's fastened change in some industry. And I tell people all the time what the pandemic has done, because we've got a great radio show in South Africa that we do on a weekly basis on this topic, is that right now, the change is, and this is going to be maybe sometimes difficult to understand, but hopefully some people will really put some thought into it. If your business is struggling now because of the pandemic is not the reason your business is where it is right now. It's all the things you've done in the past that has put you in a position where this pandemic has just highlighted the state of your business. In other words, if your business has to go through great change right now because of the pandemic, I guarantee you, your business probably needed that change in the past already. That change was a requirement. You might not have done it at the pace, or you might not have been aware of how you need to change. But right now, this pandemic has really made us all aware of the fact that change is happening at a faster pace than ever before. And I'm grateful in some ways for the pandemic, because it's made us wake up and realize we really need to do things differently and better than we've done them in the past. And we need to focus on what that is. But it also made us realize that change is here to stay. And I would recommend that every organization should be working on a kind of program like this to learn not only how to become, and it's necessary, it has its place, but not only how to become a change management organization. That anyone can do. But I'm talking about becoming a change leadership organization in a place where, in a time where we need to lead change. So yes, in the short to the answer, change would have happened whether this pandemic was here or not. And if your business hasn't been changing in the past, it probably would have had another crisis down the road, whether it was the pandemic or not. Okay, so
Sir,
moving on.
I have another very interesting question.
Okay,
Yeah, uh, the question has been asked by Mr. Kaushik Bhattacharya. Where does the mind reside in our body, right? Biologically or as per your idea, sir?
okay, so I cannot answer that question because I've never seen the mind. I would say yes, the mind has to be attached in some way to the body. I don't know, because we don't really have an image for the mind. All we know is that we're all aware of the fact that there's something outside of ourselves that is the awareness of ourselves. That's what makes us different from animals. Is an animal, as far as we know, does not have the same level of awareness of itself as a human being does. We as human beings have the ability to think and to sort of think of ourselves outside of ourselves. So when I talk about me, I know that me and that mind is a separate entity. As for what that mind really looks like, and is it inside or outside of the body, I can only share my beliefs. And my beliefs is that it's a bit of both. That the mind is attached to the body, but the mind also has the ability to connect outside of the body to something much larger than ourselves as individuals. That is where some of the greatest ideas, from the Gandhis of the world to the Nelson Mandelas, to the Albert Einsteins, to the Edisons, all of them have had the ability to reach a place outside of themselves that's greater than all of us, but that we all have the ability to reach. So I hope that answers that question for you. Okay, so I'm going to quickly finish off so that we have more time for questions. The question being, where does power come from? Well, what we've done is we've discussed now where power comes from. It comes from the subconscious part of your mind. That is really where your power, as you saw, 96 to 98% of your power. And in a business, the subconscious part of the business is mind. But then the question becomes, how do we increase your power? And to understand that, what we are going to do is we're just quickly going to talk a little bit about what happens at a subconscious level. And I see our time's running out, so I'm going to just take 5 more minutes and then we'll have at least 10 minutes for questions. And those who want to stay longer, I'm happy to stay for the next hour and answer questions that people might have. But yes? Did someone want to say something? No, okay. All right, so going back to the subconscious part of the mind, let me quickly give you the easiest, brightest, quickest picture of what happens when we say we're going to do something and we don't do it. So let's say, for example, you say, tomorrow morning, I am going to wake up and I'm going to start working on my health. So tomorrow morning, 5 o'clock, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to start exercising in my home. I'm going to do push-ups and sit-ups. I'm going to drink properly water, and I'm going to start working on my health. But now you wake up tomorrow morning and you do not do that. Guess what happens? Inside your subconscious mind, where your power lies, it picks up that you said you were going to do something that you didn't do. So in your mind, the subconscious mind, remember that's your power, your level of power goes down. And you have the next time you say you're going to do something, you're going to doubt yourself a little bit, because you're going to remember, I already said I was going to do something and I didn't do it. Now you say to your boss, I've got a report that I'm working on and I will have it ready for you at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock in the afternoon comes and goes, you don't have the report ready. Inside your subconscious mind, you say, okay, you said you were going to do something, you didn't do it. So your power goes down a little bit more. Now, what happens is it starts to become like a snowball. The more you keep saying you're going to do things that you don't do, and this happens in a business as well. The more that a business keeps promising its clients it'll do things that it doesn't do the way that it said they will do it, the more the power of the business goes down, and the more the power in the minds of our clients goes down. We stop trusting that business. That business starts getting a bad reputation. People start talking negatively about the business. And eventually we got so many things that we promise ourselves we'll do, that when we eventually get to a stage and we set a big vision and we make a big promise that we as a business are going to grow by so many % over the next year, then guess what? At the subconscious level, what happens is no support, because the subconscious mind, that cultural part, and this happens in businesses all the time, that businesses keep promising they're going to change, and then they don't do what they say they will do. And then eventually when I go into a business and I say, now we've got a new change, nobody in the business believes me. Nobody in the business supports the business, because they say the business keeps promising they're going to do things which they don't do. In other words, they're lacking something very important. The good news is that this can happen on the positive as well. Let's say, for example, tomorrow morning, you say you want to get up and you want to run. And usually you wouldn't feel like it, but this time you said, no, I promised I was going to do it, so I do it. This time you get up, and this time you get a positive from your subconscious mind. So your subconscious mind starts saying, okay, you said you were going to do it and you did it. Then you say you'll have that report ready. And even if you had to work the whole night because you promised you would have it ready the next day, it is ready. All of a sudden, again, in your subconscious mind, you get a positive. And the good news is, if we have enough of these kind of positives, and then we set a big goal, like right now, the goal is for a business, we are going to make it through this time period. You go and talk to your staff, which is your subconscious mind. You go and tell them, we're going to make it through this time period. We're not only going to make it through, we're going to be stronger than ever before, and we're going to learn how to adapt and change. This time, you get your subconscious mind, your business, supporting you as a leader instead of working against you, because they trust you and they see the power. So what it really comes down to is the number one word. If every business, if every individual can learn this one word, it will change and it will give you the power you need to get through this time ahead. And that word is integrity. Because really all that integrity is, if we have a definition, is integrity is doing what you said you would do by the time you said it would be done. So let's take that back to what I said earlier on to you. I say to you that most companies already know the basic things they should be doing right now to stay afloat and to start growing in the future again. But the power is not going to be in knowing what you should be doing. The power is going to be in doing the basic things right. In other words, building integrity as a cornerstone into your business for these next few months. Integrity is we will do what we say we will do by the time we said it would be done, because that really is what power is. So the number one word is integrity. And then finally, I wanted to go into what are the three things that you as a business must start doing from today to help you get through this time period. Number one, return to your vision. Go back to your vision, and as a business, and please let us know, because at Carving Talent, we can come and we can help you with this as a business to redefine what your vision is. Maybe the original owners who started the business are no longer there. If that is the case, ask yourself, what was their vision? Why did they start this business? How can we go back to the original vision? Because no business just starts simply just to make money. Every business that really makes, well, any business that starts just to make money never lasts longer than a few years anyway. But any business that has lasted for longer than 5 years did so because they started with a vision. A vision for being the best, a vision for the best customer service, a vision for creating the best product, a vision for being a business with integrity that does for their customers what they promise they will do. What was your original vision? What is that vision on your wall of your business? Is everybody living that vision? So there's the one simple thing everybody in your business can do from tomorrow. Say, guys, we're going to return to our vision. The second thing is choose your top 3 to 5 things that really make your business work well. I call them the needle shifters. So many times in business, we run around doing things that are not growing our business, but it helps us feel like we're busy. You know, we're busy all day long, but it's not growing our business. Go back to the basics of your business and ask yourself, each in the business and then in each department, what are the top 3 to 5 things? If we just do those things properly, we will get through this time period. Yes, we must still focus on the other things, but our main focus are going to be on those top 3 things. And if it is like, for example, customer service is one of your top 3 things. What are we going to do to make sure that our customers are served 100% well? If it is in terms of product quality has always been the thing that has been done well in your business, then say, right, if that is in the top 3, what we're going to make sure is everything we produce, even if we might not produce as much as we may have in the past during this time period, but everything we're going to produce is going to be top quality. And so you will know as a business. And once again, if you don't know, let us know. We can come and support you with this and support your departments to understand what are the top 3 to 5 things that has really helped the business get to where it is today. Because remember, every business, no matter how big it is, every business started as a small business. Every business started as 1 or 2 people that had an idea, had a vision, and started doing the little things right. Go back to that again. And then the final thing is commit with integrity to do those things. Commit with integrity in the definition that I've given you today, that you are going to return to your vision. You're going to be a business that's vision orientated, not circumstances orientated. We're going to choose the top things that have always helped us succeed. And we're going to go back to focusing on those things, because once we do that, once we feel in some sort of control, because right now we all feel out of control. But right now, if we can do that, what you will find is that inside your mind, I haven't even had time to speak about that today. We call about it in psychology, the locus of control. We feel fearful when we focus on the things we can't control. And when we are fearful, we don't think rationally. And too many businesses are focusing on the things they cannot control right now. Go back to the thing you can control, which is those top 3 to 5 things, and focusing on your vision, on what made you great in the first place. And you will find the more you focus on that, the more in control you will start to feel, and the less of this anxiety and fear you will feel, and the more you will start to think rationally again. So finally, and then I'll open to questions, just to let those business owners and those entrepreneurs and everybody know, we are working through Carving Challenge on a, on a Carving Challenge on a.
Stanley, there are a few questions I'll take up one by one.
Okay, let's take the questions first.
Yes, sir. This is from Dr. Durga Madhav Mahapatra. He has asked basically power, leader, responsibility, and change, which you have taken as priority in this pandemic situation. Power, leader, responsibility, and change.
Okay, for me, the priority is power right now. That would be the priority, is going back, and everything that you know you should do, just do it. Everything that you promise to do, just do it. Build up your integrity. That is the number one thing that we need to be doing as that. And then the number 2 thing above that is going to need good leadership.
Okay.
We need leadership. And, I would almost put it in the order he's put it, because when we have great leadership, we have people who are taking responsibility and handing over responsibility to those who are willing to run and say, because in this time, like let's say a cricket game, some of the greatest cricket players have been the people like the Sachin Tendulkars, like the Dhonis of the world. They are the people that when the game is at its toughest, they will say, give the bat to me, I'll go win the game for you. They will take the responsibility, and you can always count on them when it's the most toughest. Right now, we need similar leadership. We need people to stand up and say, give me the responsibility. I will take us through this period. And that is just one thing I want to say, that I just want to acknowledge with Carving Talent, is that working with them, I do that because we are the kind of individuals that want to help. That's why I'm here as well. We want to help you as businesses, but sometimes we first need to change what we're thinking. Any other questions?
Yes, sir. There are questions. Let me come to the next question. The question is, though it is, this is from Ms. Prerna, though it is possible to accept the change, the greatest challenge is to sustain life with it for a longer time, right? So how do we really cope up with that?
Okay, so I don't know. I don't want to answer the question incorrectly. So if I can just understand the question, what she's saying is that, yes, it's fair and well, maybe tell me if I'm wrong, but I'll tell you how I'm understanding the question, is that, yes, we need to focus on growing as a business, but our very first focus is, how do we just sustain life right now? How do we just survive? Is that the question?
Yeah, that is the question.
Okay, so what I would say to that is that exactly the same principles that I've given to you as a business can be applied on a personal level. Firstly, number one, let's go back. Let me quickly go back to this, and then I'll show you how it can work with individuals as well as okay. So I'm just quickly going to here. The first thing is, as individuals, don't forget who you are. You need to, more than ever before, you need to realize, and people are being forced to realize, what their value is. The second thing is, they need to be focusing on what they can do to get through this crisis, not on the circumstances. And they need to be present, and they need to be asking themselves, I cannot answer this question for every person, but what I can say is that what the most likely way for you individually to get through this crisis, for you to get through this crisis, is that you need to be present. In other words, you need to be focused right now and asking yourself that question every day. What can I do to help me get through this crisis? What can I do to help me grow? I cannot in such a short answer, give you a bigger answer on what each individual can do. But what I can say is that just like a business, you need to be doing those three things. You need to be going back to the basics, to asking yourself, what can I do? Anything that I can do right now that can help me bring in some money for me and my family. Because if you are not doing that, and I agree, and I think that that's a big concern from the doctor and a concern for me as well. If you are not even eating every day and you're not getting through the day, then it's going to be very difficult for you to focus on the business side of things. But I would suggest maybe if we have, sir, if we have a lot of people that are asking that kind of question, perhaps we can have a webinar that specifically just addresses what the individual can do.
Yeah,
to
sure,
help them
sure.
out.
Okay,
So I
Stella, there
think,
is a very specific, industry-specific question. If you wish, you can take it up. This is from Dr. Sanjeev Tandon. What is asked, how, in your opinion, tourism and hospitality business is going to change post-COVID? Do you feel that the sector require major shift in the strategies?
okay, so once again, such great questions that are coming out today. The truth of the matter is, sir, that it's very difficult for anybody to predict accurately how things are going to change for business because we've never experienced something quite like this before. That's the bad news. The good news is that we have experienced downturns in economy before. And whereas individuals on their own are very difficult to predict when it comes to changing behavior, with a group of individuals and a mass of individuals, it becomes much easier because we just learn from the past. So what I'm going to say is that, yes, there are very specific industry challenges that will come up. There are various general challenges that will come up for everybody. We have, and I haven't really had time to show it here, but I will show it quickly for those interested just in the last 5 minutes. The reason why we're also doing this webinar today is to see if there will be an interest from businesses for future such webinars where we will go into specific questions. So that gives me the opportunity just to mention here. These are some of the questions we're going to ask in future.
Can you just shed a light about the formula? There are many questions coming about the formula. Only P has been explained. So if they want to know the entire formula, what they're supposed
Yes,
to do.
I will get back to that now. Let me quickly finish this thought. So yeah, here are some of the questions we will be answering in future webinars. For example, how can we create immediate cash flow and weather the coming months? We're going to be looking in detail into that. Secondly, how do I generate sales when borders are closing and everyone is staying away? While there is people that are doing it, how are they doing it? How can we as businesses do it? Thirdly, how bad are things likely to get and for how long? I think we need to have some kind of an idea. And then fourthly, how can I turn tough times into the ultimate opportunity for myself and my business? So what we are going to be doing is we're going to be speaking, and I'm going to ask Sir Devi with Carving Talent to help us to ask businesses which are the things they'd be interested in discussing. Here are just, we will send you a comprehensive list, but we'd like to make webinars that are aimed at guiding you as businesses to get through these times with the things that are really challenging you. So we're going to ask you to come up with questions and things that are really challenging you, and we will go and find some answers for you, but just some ideas. So for number one, we're going to talk about what's next, so the hard truth about the coming months. Secondly, we're going to talk about quick fixes and the fastest way to immediate cash that you can do right now. Thirdly, we're going to talk about health first and top tips to keep you and your team in the flow. Then we're going to talk about your plan, a step-by-step cash flow plan, which is really going to work for you. We're going to talk about the crisis special, turning hard times into opportunities. We're going to talk about remote sales, how to generate that, digital products for your business, if that's what you want to look at doing. We're going to look at global opportunities, the next money makers, and then also smart investments, how to invest in a downturn, and much more. What I'm going to say, and then I'm going to get back to the question of the formula, is that please let us know who would be interested in these type of topics. We would like to do more of these kind of events for businesses, which is needed by everybody right now. Please email us at carvingtalent@gmail.com or contact Sir Devi on the mobile number that is written on there. And that is how we will know where the interest lies, which areas businesses want us to focus on. We are just looking to add as much value to individuals as businesses because we believe in collaboration. We will all be able to get through this time together. So we have a lot of questions I know that we won't be able to answer, but I'm going to go back to the previous one, sir. And just to confirm with you, the question was around the change creator formula.
Yes.
Okay, so let me quickly just go back to the formula so that everybody can see it on their screen. And what I'm going to say is that, there we go, is that there's a lot obviously to this formula. So what I would like to suggest is that there's no ways in the time that we have, we've already gone over the hour, and I know some people might need to leave. But but I am committed to those who want to ask questions. I will stay with you and go through it. So let me rather say this, sir. If there's any other specific questions, then I will answer them now. And then those who are interested in staying for an extra 10 minutes, I will quickly just share with them a little bit more about this formula. Can we do it that way?
Yeah, that will be great if we can stay with the formula.
Sorry, say again?
Yeah, if we can know more about the formula, that will be great.
Okay, are there any other questions? I will come back to the
Okay, there's one question. There is one question from Mr. Gyan Nidhi. It is desirable to have employees focused on the vision of the business. But in situation like this pandemic, how can their motivation be increased to help their fight their emotions? Because sometimes emotions overcomes your subconscious.
Okay. Thank you again for the question. That is what the Change Creator formula, as you see it in front of you, that is what it is aimed at doing. Remember, this side, the right-hand side of the formula is all about that resistance that you spoke about, that fear, that concern of what's going on. The question that he has is, how do we get this side of the formula bigger than this side of the formula? In other words, how do we get the motivation to be greater than the resistance? That is obviously not a question, once again, an answer I can give in such a short time. What I'm going to say is stick around so that you can learn a little bit more about the formula. And if it is really a concern for you, for your business, as it should be, then please be in contact with Sir Devi and them in Carving Talent, and we can arrange to do a talk like this for you and your management team, as well as a talk for more that we can give to your employees to help them with this. But that is exactly what we're aiming to do, is to answer that specific question. It's just not a quick answer, that's all. Any other questions?
No, sir, good to go. You can go.
Okay, so for those who are with us now, I'm going to give you a quick explanation of the Change Creator formula, and then when we send this out to you, I will also add the parts that are not here. So let me just see. Would you give me a moment just to quickly get something else on screen? Then I can show everybody the formula a little bit better. Okay. So I'm just quickly going to bring it up because it isn't part of today's presentation, but it doesn't mean that I can't quickly bring it up. In the meantime, sir, are there any other questions while I'm finding it for the delegates quickly? Any other questions that we can deal with while I'm looking for this?
Yeah, one question from Mr. Prakash Nair. How business going to change post-COVID?
Okay, once again, so that is if you saw, and I know I'm deflecting the questions all the time because they are questions that take a lot more than a quick answer. That is why we've created specifically separate sessions going forward where we will be discussing these specific topics. One of the topics we will be discussing is exactly that question, which is how is this going to change business in the future so that we're aware and we can prepare for it. So what I'm going to ask that sir also to do for us is also to be on the lookout for our further webinars and to come and join us for that session specifically where we will discuss it. But it's not something we can discuss in such a short time.
Okay.
Okay.
Another question is there from Mr. Asim Banerjee. Here, is there a way to recharge the subconscious mind?
Say again?
Is there a way to recharge the subconscious mind?
Yes, so there is a way to reach the subconscious mind. And remember, the subconscious mind in a business is the culture. So we have to reach the subconscious mind if we're going to make real change. Yes, there is a way to reach the subconscious mind. And it is a process that you must go through. But the good news is once you've learned to do it, you are able to create amazing things in your life and you're able to create a lot of good change. Again, and so I apologize for this. And hopefully everybody will understand why I keep saying this, because these questions are not questions that can be answered easily. They really need a lot of in-depth understanding. And what I'm doing is I'm making a note of all of these questions, and we will create webinars around answering these questions going forward. But in short, yes, there is a way to reach the subconscious and change the subconscious. Okay, so can everybody see my new screen now that I'm sharing?
Yes.
Okay, so in short, this is the Change Creator formula in full. We're going to start on the left-hand side of the formula, which is the motivational side. And as you will see, just very briefly running through it, is that the very first thing that needs to change in an individual is what we call dissatisfaction and isness. So in other words, the first thing is you will not create a change in your individual capacity unless there is a level of dissatisfaction. Like many people know that, for example, they're unhealthy, but they're not dissatisfied enough to change. So they stay the same, they stay unhealthy. Now, if we take this to a business level, we change dissatisfaction with what we call urgency. In other words, if there is going to be a major change in a business, there first needs to be a level of urgency. And that is what happens many times, is that businesses don't have an adequate level of urgency to change. Although right now it's changing because of the big changes in the world, people are very urgent and they suddenly want to change. But usually a business, looks at themselves and they go, we've been okay for 20 years. We've had no problems. Look how strong we are. We shouldn't change anything. Let's just keep doing things the same way we have always done. Well, as Jack Welch, who was the leader of General Electric, one of the biggest companies in the world, he said, when the rate of change on the outside is faster than the rate of change on the inside, then the end is near. And many times businesses don't realize that the world is changing so fast outside that they haven't prepared themselves adequately on the inside. So this is a great opportunity more than ever before right now for us as individuals and as companies to change. But we need to have that level of urgency. Then once we are dissatisfied on an individual level, we move up to the top where you will see the G that stands for your goal. We need to have a goal for what we're moving into. So we're dissatisfied with where we are, but do we have a goal for where we want to go? On a business level, we change the G with a V, which stands for vision. Do we have a vision for where we want to go as a business? Or do we need to go back to what our vision is? So we have a level of urgency to change, but are we clear on the vision? And do we know how to share this vision with our employees so that they have the same vision and that overcomes the resistance? And then once we have a goal, as you will see there, the B and the W stands for belief and willingness. In other words, do you believe that you can achieve this goal? Because if you do not believe that, then you will also be stuck and you won't move forward. Does the business believe that it can create the vision? Does the business believe that it can get through this time that lies ahead? If it doesn't, then we need to work with the business on that level to change that belief system. And then the willingness is, are you willing to make sacrifices? Because right now, as an individual and as businesses, we are going to have to make a lot of sacrifices to make it through this time period. What are we willing to do and what are we not willing to do? It's going to come down to your value as a business. What are your values? Because the things that go against your values, you will not be willing to do. And the things that are aligned with your values, you will be willing to do. Do you even know what those are? Have you maybe as a business been there so long that you've forgotten what your vision is and what your values are as a business? Maybe now's the time to readdress that as an organization as a whole. Then once we've got the goal set up, the belief and the willingness, we go to what we call a burning desire. So that is when we start creating that desire to change. And that can only happen if the first few steps have been done correctly. What happens many times is that businesses want to change, but they have not done this part of the work. They haven't created a sense of urgency. They haven't got the staff to buy into the vision. They haven't got everybody to believe in what they're doing and to be willing to make the sacrifices. So they never increase. In a business, we don't call it burning desire, but in a business, we call it group desire. They never increase that group desire to change. And then they always struggle and nothing seems to happen. It's because as businesses, we haven't really learned how to do that properly. That is the difference between change management and change leadership, is that we need to lead people into a change. Once we've developed that burning desire, then only then do we focus on the AP, which is the action plan. Because if those first few steps have been done correctly, you will see the action plan will start to come. Every business sitting right now saying we don't know what to do, it's because they're focusing on the other side of the equation, on the resistance, on the circumstances, on the fear. And what we want to help businesses do is to focus on the right-hand side of the equation. Let's get that urgency up. Let's get that vision up. Let's get that belief up. Let's get that willingness and that desire up. And I guarantee you, if you do that correctly within your organization, you have all the people you need that will give you the action plan that will help you not only make it through this time period, but will help you grow as a business through this time period. And then we move all of this. It can only happen if today's lesson on power is in place. If we understand where the power comes from, and we understand that as businesses, we need to be in integrity with what we've decided. And then on the left-hand side of the equation is all the things that cause the resistance, which you might have mentioned, is depending on how negative or positive your thinking is in the organization, and as a whole, as an individual, and your managers and your leaders, how that will lead to how positive and negative your feelings are. So this is your emotion, as I'm sure your emotional states will determine how productive you are. All of that is also determined by the programming and experiences of an individual. A person who has had programmed negatively in their life and has had negative experiences is going to have a lot of resistance to change. And when it comes to a culture, when it comes to an organization, program and experiences, we're actually talking about the culture, the current culture. So if the current culture in the organization is one that is already not good, that doesn't adopt to change easily, that has a lot of mistrust, that has a lot of times in the past when we promised we were going to do things that we didn't do, you're going to find that that's going to cause a lot of resistance because there's not going to be that belief in the change and in the leadership. So we need to go and change that. And then finally, your environment is also going to be very important. That if your environment is negative, it becomes very difficult to create change. So it's inside an individual and inside every organization, we need to create an environment of success, an environment that's aligned to the vision where the business is going. If that environment is not congruent with the change you're wanting to create, you are just going to cause resistance. So in very, very short, that is a little bit more explaining the variables that make up the change formula. Any other questions?
Also running out of time. Devi sir, you can take it over.
Okay, I didn't hear if there was a question there.
Hello.
Is there a question?
No, we are done with the questions actually.
Okay.
Okay. Then I can hand over to Sir Devi again.
Yeah.
So Mr. Stanley, thank you so much. Somebody said something?
Yeah. Can you please share the reference of this formula? I mean, academic reference, if anything is there.
Stanley, that question is to you.
Now this
But
model has been created by Stanley and his team actually. So this is their.
Has it been published anywhere?
Okay, so David, we have already written the book.
Let me handle it. There's a book. The ebook will be shared with you, sir.
No, let me just quickly share. The ebook that I'm going to be sharing is my very first book that I wrote, which is called Liftoff. And Liftoff is all about individuals and companies learning how to do that specific thing we spoke about, setting the right goals and setting the right vision for the business. So that is something I will send to everybody today. The Change Creator book, although it's been written, we haven't published it yet. The reason being, we've got a company in South Africa, one of our biggest financial institutions, that are going to partner with us in that. So they are buying over 500,000 copies of that book to spread it out across Africa. Only then may we publish and release the book. So that will happen within the next 2 to 3 months. As soon as that's done, then we will forward a copy of that book to everybody as well. But we cannot forward it until it's been published via this company.
So we are totally run out of time. Stanley, thank you so much for enlightening all of us. And it has indeed been very informative. And I suppose the audience also is of the same view. You spoke about lots of things, going back to employees to ask who you are. focusing on the wrong equation, the reasons we were talking about, the greatest mistake is doing the same thing and expect the different results. And these are quite good information, which we somehow seems to overlook. And you also spoke about 5 things you have been doing in the past that prevents productivity. And of course, what is more important is knowing doing gap. This is where we normally start. And I also written down here that pandemic is not the reason. What you did it in the past is, the problem. And one thing which I could pick it up is, when it comes to change, normally animals adapt to the situations, whereas man creates new situations. So this is where I suppose, all those formula which you are trying to explain can come, very useful to us. So it has been a good discussion, and thank you so much. And from my side, if anybody would want to get in touch with me, Stanley is just a call away. We can continue to have, webinar which are specific to the specific problems, which your organization or your personal life has. We can take it up, whether it is a large corporation or whether it is a small organization. These can be done, and Stanley can actually expand those equation, which are relevant to the particular organization and come out with solutions. So this is what it is. In fact, all the participants would get the participation certificate, because I remember the last webinar which we did, people were asking for it, and some we sent it across also. So this will take a while, but let me promise from my side, this will be sent. And as far as book list of is concerned, that also will be sent along with that to you. And do write to us what you felt about the program, your suggestions, your views. Those will be very precious to us, and hope to work together and do something which is good and come out of the crisis we are in it with the formulas and the tools which we can offer to you. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us.
May I quickly have one last word to everybody, and then you can say your final goodbye. Just to everybody, I'm going to really encourage everybody. We've never needed to work together more than what we do right now. We're all in the same problem, and no matter how big your organization is, we all need support from each other right now. I'm really going to encourage you, come back to us, tell us what are some of your biggest concerns, tell us what are some of the things we can help you with. And what we will do is we will arrange more sessions like this. And even within your organization, take an hour out, get your staff together, let's arrange a webinar like this where we can talk one-on-one, and let's hear what some of the questions from your staff are that they might be afraid to ask you personally. Maybe we can even have a session without the leaders in the organization there, so that we can ask them to trust us to ask real questions that we can come back and help you as leaders to answer those